If you are pregnant or you've recently had a baby, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Kath Bequee, a physiotherapist working in women's health and mum of three. Inside my online program, Fitness Mama, I just love helping support women to care for their bodies during pregnancy, prepare their bodies for birth, and support their after-birth recovery, helping them feel confident and strong inside out during this important stage of their lives. In this podcast, join me each week as we dive into all things pregnancy care, childbirth, and postnatal recovery, helping you through every step of the journey. It is absolutely possible to feel amazing and confident in our bodies during this motherhood journey, and I want that for you. Come and say hi to me on Instagram @fitnessedmama, and let's dive into today's episode. Hello and welcome back to the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. So today we are chatting all things antenatal expressing, so breastfeeding preparation whilst pregnant. I am chatting with Amber, who is a midwife of 11 years. She is host of the Bloom Pregnancy, Birth Baby Postpartum podcast, and she's also the founder of Body, Birth and Baby. So Amber is really passionate about education around birth, breastfeeding and postpartum. And in today's episode, Amber discusses everything around antenatal breastfeeding education, the hand expression of colostrum. We talk about difficulties with antenatal expressing, when to express, why to express, when not to express during pregnancy. It's a really great episode. I trust if you're pregnant or you know someone who is pregnant, then they're going to love this episode. Before I do jump straight into this episode, I want to invite you to come and join our free 7-day trial. If you want to prepare your body for birth, if you want to exercise safely and confidently during pregnancy, and if you want to help boost your after-birth recovery, then these home-based quality physio-created workouts could be just what you need to help you restore your pelvic floor and core, help you get strong again, and help you get back to doing all the things you love with a bubba by your side. So join us for 7-day trial where you can do these convenient, short, easy quality workouts from the comfort of your home whilst your bubba sleeps, at the end of a long day at work, or while your toddler is running around. So head to fitnessedmama.com. All the links are in the show notes. There's a free 7-day trial. And that's it. Let's get on to today's episode. Amber, thank you so much for joining me on the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast. After 20 minutes, we just finally hit record.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this chat with you.
Absolutely. So we're discussing all things antenatal expressing, like preparing for breastfeeding. It's really exciting to chat because I think this is really a growing area where there's much more awareness around it now. When I first was pregnant, oh my gosh, this is showing my age, 12 years ago, it wasn't something we discussed at all or asked the doctors about. Maybe that was just me. Yeah, so really great to chat. And you've got your own podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited.
Yeah, and you've got your own podcast, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I have Bloom with Body, Birth and Baby. So I love chatting all things pregnancy, birth and postpartum over there as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so look, let's dive into it. Do you think all women should consider antenatal expressing, or only particular groups of women who are pregnant? Or actually, before we go into that question, let's take a step back. What is antenatal expressing?
Yes. So antenatal expressing is essentially where you hand express your breast. So this is something that you can do if you've got care provider approval from 37 weeks onwards. And essentially what that means is you're able to do some hand expressing of your breast to see if you are able to get out colostrum. So All women do have colostrum. If you're pregnant, from about 16 to 20 weeks is actually when your body starts creating colostrum, which is the initial milk for your baby. So this initial milk is so high in antibodies and immunity. We often call it liquid gold because it's so valuable for your baby. It's really, really high in quality. However, it's very, very minimal in quantity. So we're only expecting tiny, tiny, tiny little droplets. So antenatal expressing is where you can actually express your breast in pregnancy from 37 weeks onwards, once or twice a day, to see if you are able to get some of that colostrum out. So everyone is entirely different. Some women are able to express and they will have quite an abundant supply of colostrum. Some women express and they're able to get tiny, tiny little droplets, which is what we would expect for most. And some women express and they're actually not able to get anything at all. And I just always liked everyone to know, before even considering antenatal expressing, I just want people to know that all is completely normal. There's no abnormal when it comes to antenatal expressing, because what I don't want is women to start their breastfeeding journey and start antenatal expressing and then thinking, oh, I don't have any, it's going to impact my breastfeeding journey, which it absolutely doesn't. Even if we weren't to antenatal express, your colostrum will be there for your baby when your baby is born. And when your baby is born, your baby is able to latch and suck and get all of that beautiful colostrum. However, we know that we can antenatal express from 37 weeks if you have care provider approval and potentially get out some of this colostrum and save it in a syringe. So essentially that is what antenatal expressing actually is.
So that then begs the question, does antenatal expressing help increase the volume of colostrum in those early few days?
So, look, what we can often see is that if you are antenatal expressing, because what happens is when you're expressing your breast, essentially it can make more. So often we do see more colostrum the more women do antenatal express. So often what happens is we see a tiny little bit of colostrum initially, and what often happens is as women continue to express, they can often see more volume. So essentially, yes, a lot of the time, even if women start off with tiny, tiny, tiny little amounts, the more they do this, some women do see more of that, but it's also hugely oxytocin dependent as well. So a lot of women find that they may actually get more colostrum on some days and less on other days. And that is completely normal as well. It's this real hormonal process that happens, which is all to do with your oxytocin. So it can always depend. And that's why I always say to women when they are antenatal expressing, try not to worry about the amount that you're getting, because it's also valuable to learn that skill, because it is often, hand expressing is often a skill that you may need to actually do in those first few days after birth, and even beyond that as well. There are times where some women will need to hand express at times. And so it is so valuable to learn that as a skill. So even if they're not able to get any colostrum out, it is still there. It's absolutely still there. And like I said, once your baby latches and starts sucking, they will be able to get that colostrum. But even by practicing that skill, if you're allowed to do so, and your care provider has said that this is the good fit for you, then it is a valuable skill to even learn that hand expressing. I always say the more you can learn in pregnancy, the better, because there's so much to learn once you've had your baby. So the more you can learn is always a good thing.
And from the other receiving end, as I said at the start, I didn't do antenatal expressing. And I went through pregnancy and then I'd just given birth. And again, maybe I was just totally ignorant. But it was not a shock to the system. I got a bit of a surprise when I just had a baby. The baby is on my chest. I'm like startled. I've just given birth. I don't know where I am. And then suddenly, I assume they asked for consent, but suddenly I find the midwives milking my breasts. And I remember thinking, what on earth is happening? Like, I always just assumed the baby would start sucking. So I think if I'd had a bit more practice doing that myself, I wouldn't have been quite so taken aback when someone else started doing it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's often what I say to women in pregnancy as well, because it's absolutely your choice as to whether you antenatally express or not. And one of the things I do say when women are considering the decision around antenatal expressing, I do say that, again, to hand express in pregnancy, it's that skill that you can take into your postpartum, and that it means that if you are needing to hand express and to give your baby some top-ups of colostrum, if you are having some issues with your baby latching, or there are lots of different reasons why you may need to hand express, but it's so much more empowering to be able to go, okay, can I have a syringe? I can do this. I've been practicing this, rather than, like you said, you just have this baby and it's such an overwhelming experience. And then next minute you have a midwife, when you're already so sensitive after you've just given birth as well. Everything is so much more sensitive. And then you've got a midwife coming and hand expressing. I think it is so much nicer to be able to do it yourself as opposed to having someone else do it for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've mentioned a few times, if you've got your healthcare providers, okay to do hand expressing from 37 weeks onwards, when is it not okay to, or when does the woman need to be mindful of not hand expressing? Like, did that make sense? That question? Like, when is it not okay to hand express?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's why we do always just get you to have that individual discussion with your care provider. And we generally just say not before 37 weeks. Some care providers will happily say to do so from 36 weeks, but generally, as a general rule, we would sort of say 37 weeks. And then also as well, if women have got a shortened cervix, for example, or if they've got a cervical stitch or an abdominal stitch, or if they've got placenta previa, low-lying placenta, anything like that, where potentially they're not planning to have a vaginal birth or anything around that, then that may be sort of a situation where you would discuss that with your care provider in terms of potentially not antenatal expressing. So that's why they're just some things to consider. Unfortunately, the research around antenatal expressing is quite limited. We've only really got the DAME trial. We don't have a lot of other research. So that's why we're just trying to stick to things that we have studied. But like I said, there's still a huge growth area that needs to happen in terms of research around antenatal expressing. So that's why we always say to have that individual discussion with your care provider if it's right for you.
Yeah, right. So if there's not much... So to clarify the benefits of antenatal expressing, you've talked about the fact that it can be empowering, it can potentially, I guess we don't know yet, but help get the colostrum out in the early days. Are there any other big potential benefits of antenatal expressing, researched or non-researched?
Yeah, absolutely. So the benefit of, and again, where the research is it was particularly done for women who had gestational diabetes and whose babies potentially needed top-ups if they were having their blood sugar levels monitored, and if they were to need some top-ups to keep them on an exclusive breastfeeding journey, to be able to give them that extra colostrum as opposed to introducing formula really early if they did need those top-ups. So that's where a lot of the research happened around antenatal expressing. And so along with that, there are some babies who do need to have blood sugar level monitoring in those early hours. And so if they do need to have that little bit of top up of colostrum, then having that is really, really beneficial. Other reasons would be if you had to be separated from your baby for whatever reason. So say, for example, if you had a retained placenta and you had to go to theatre to have a manual removal of placenta, or if you had a tear that required a repair in theatre, or any other reason that medically you and your baby was separated, if there was a concern for your baby and your baby had to be separated from you. So these are all some reasons where the baby can have that colostrum that you've already expressed antenatally, to have their first sort of feeds as colostrum if you were to be separated. And also as well, I think a lot of women just expect that babies will be born and they come out and they latch straight away and it's breastfeeding's off to this blissful start, which for many, yes, that is the case. But For many, it's actually not. A lot of babies really struggle to latch, and a lot of babies are quite sleepy in those first 48 hours. And for some babies, they just are so sleepy that they just don't want to latch. And so that's when there can be circumstances where using that antenatal express colostrum can be so beneficial. And I also think as well, it just helps women with that extra bit of confidence walking into the birth suite with their bag of frozen colostrum, if they have been able to actually get that volume, is just confidence in going, okay, so no matter what happens with breastfeeding, to start off with, I've got that colostrum. So I do find that more women, like most women, don't regret antenatal expressing, I do find. And like I said, it is something that there is so much more research needed in this area, but we also do have so much more intervention in birth these days. And what I think a lot of people forget is that intervention in birth can really impact your breastfeeding journey. So again, having those top-ups of colostrum to be able to give to your baby is so vital. A lactation consultant, and my baby would not latch for the first 48 hours. She could not latch on. It was so painful if she was to latch on, and I needed to use my antenatal express colostrum. So, even like there are just so many circumstances where potentially there can be challenges around breastfeeding in those early days where antenatal express colostrum could be valuable. But again, it's absolutely not essential. Women have been breastfeeding their babies for a very, very long time before we even did antenatal expressing. So again, it's not for everyone, and that's absolutely okay. But they are some of the benefits.
Yeah. And Amber, do you know how nice it is to hear that you had difficulties breastfeeding and you're a lactation consultant?
Huge difficulty. I've had every challenge under the sun with breastfeeding.
Really? Oh, I might have to chat to you on another episode all about your breastfeeding challenges.
So many challenges.
That's like I love hearing that. And I think it's like when I tell people I had prolapse issues as a pelvic floor physio. So I'm like, yes, yep, it happens.
It's almost like we have to learn it for ourselves or something, isn't it? Like we just have to go through it so we know.
Well, I think also, yes, you had breastfeeding challenges in the early days, but you were also, I assume, I haven't asked you, but able to overcome those breastfeeding challenges. And saying, like, I've had the prolapse issues and I've overcome them with, my exercises and all the rest. So I think that's also an important part of the story.
Exactly. I think knowledge is power. And I absolutely, really genuinely feel that if I wasn't a lactation consultant and I didn't have the knowledge that I had, I don't think I would have been one of those women who breastfeeding wouldn't have worked out for, because I got some poor advice along the way by people who didn't know I was an IBCLC. And I just know that if I didn't have the knowledge I had, I absolutely would not be still be breastfeeding, I don't think.
I've got so many questions, but I'm going to hold it because I'm now wanting you on again to hear about your breastfeeding challenges.
Yes,
and ladies, if you're listening to this and if you'd like to hear about Amber's breastfeeding challenges, send me a DM on Instagram at FitnessMama. But yeah, Amber, we'll sort out an interview if you want when we get off this call.
Yes, I'm always so happy to share. I think like I said, I just think it is good to know that even with all the knowledge, it's one of those things where there are things that happen that you have to overcome yourself. And again, it's just about having the right knowledge and support to get you through that. So yes, very happy to share that on another day if people want to.
Okay, I've got one more question about the antenatal colostrum and expressing. And then I want to, two more questions. So the first question, in terms of the practicalities, what sort of kit do you need, or do you need anything? Like how do you collect the colostrum? What do you need to collect it?
Yeah, really great question. So a lot of hospitals now are happy to give you a little kit, which essentially is syringes and little caps as well. So what you actually do is when you do that hand expressing of your breast. And I always say it's really great for if you have access to midwives. So for example, if you're going through midwife-led care, or if you're seeing an obstetrician who has midwives who you're able to have appointments with, if you can see a midwife, it's actually so valuable to go in and say, okay, can you just show me on me? Because we're so happy to do that. And that can actually, like, getting the technique right can actually make a huge difference of whether you actually see that you're getting colostrum or not. I have so many women come to me and say, I'm not getting anything. I don't think I have any. And then we squeeze and out it comes. And it's just purely because it is quite a specific area that you have to press. So I always say, if you can do that, that's always fantastic. And then they can show you how to collect it as well. So essentially, we collect it with a little syringe. So usually a 1, 3, or 5 ml syringe. And so we just draw the colostrum from your breast into the syringe. And then you just sort of get the air out and put a little cap on top. And then you can label it with a sticky label. Some hospitals or care providers are able to print off your UR labels that you would use in hospital and can give you those. Otherwise, you just put your name, full name and date on a sticky label and attach that to the syringe. And then you can put it into the fridge for 48 to 72 hours in the coldest part of the fridge and then into the freezer.
So a follow-on question from that. How long does colostrum last for? And also, is it as beneficial once it's defrosted?
So essentially, so it can be in the fridge. So yeah, it can be in the fridge for about 48 to 72 hours. And then it needs to be in the freezer. If you have a separate door freezer to your fridge, then it can be in there for 3 months. I can send the link of the storage guidelines, because it's just so that people can really read it, because it can get a bit confusing. And then it could be in a deep freezer for 6 months if you have access to a deep freezer. So what we know is that the most benefit is if your baby is sucking directly from your breast, because then your breast is able to actually give all the antibodies and everything that your baby needs with that saliva exchange. So we know that that is the most beneficial. And then freshly expressed is the next beneficial. But again, it is still so valuable to have, like, any breast milk is valuable, basically. So whilst, yes, when your baby sucks directly from the breast, that's like the most valuable. But again, when you defrost breast milk, it is still so valuable for your baby with that colostrum. So always, yeah, great to use. And some people don't use it all, and if it expires, then you can use it you can use it on your nipples if you've got some nipples, or you can use it in your baby's bath if it does expire, or use it on their skin, or things like that.
Yeah,
so, yeah,
love that. And they probably don't know the answer to that question. It's probably, or maybe they do, but I assume it's similar to, you know how vegetables are snap frozen, they retain their nutrients a lot more than if they're old and soggy.
Yeah, well, the World Health Organization sort of does say, like, freshly expressed, and then to go, like, you know, they sort of line it down like that in terms of the fresh, like directly from the breast, then freshly expressed, and then frozen. So it kind of says that in terms of benefits. That's what the World Health Organization says.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think now to zoom out a little bit, we've talked about antenatal expressing to help prepare for breastfeeding. What are some other ways that women can help to prepare themselves for breastfeeding?
So my biggest thing that I'm so passionate about, because I think it makes such a difference to your breastfeeding journey, is education about breastfeeding in pregnancy. This is a huge one. It is so important, because I think people expect that, you know, when they have their baby, that the midwives are going to teach them everything that they need to know about breastfeeding, which I hope, yes, that does happen. I hope that women get amazing breastfeeding advice from midwives on the wards when they are in hospital. However, we also, like, I've been a hospital midwife for many years, and I know that it is such a fast-paced, busy environment and also as well, you know what it's like when you've just had a baby. You're not often thinking, you're not retaining everything. Often you've had, like, potentially if you've had a long labor or anything that, sometimes you're not just always able to retain all of that information. And we know that. We know that, when we actually give information, women are not going to retain absolutely everything. So I just think it's so valuable to be able to go into your breastfeeding journey with you and your partner or support person to have as much knowledge as you can about breastfeeding, because then you can always be one step ahead. If you've gone home from hospital, and often whether you are in sort of public or private, often you go home and then your milk comes in, and then it's a whole different ballgame to when you were in hospital. And I think it's so important to know that if you are having challenges, knowing what to do sort of in those, like, immediately once those challenges arise, and knowing where to get support is so, so valuable. So that leads on to my next thing, is know where to go for support, professional support. So have a lactation consultant you can turn to, know what your local council or your hospital provides and how timely they can provide that care. So find all these things out beforehand. Having a really good GP as well is really, really valuable in case you do need to see a GP for some breastfeeding issues, as well as a lactation consultant. As well, with breastfeeding, really trying to set up your support system as well. So really trying to have your support system on board in terms of your partner or people who can really look after you, so that you can actually spend those early days on the couch with your baby and really learning how to breastfeed, and even having friends who you can turn to just to debrief as well, I think is really valuable. So there are all so many things that you can be doing to help get your breastfeeding journey off to a good start.
Love that. And as you're talking, it's bringing back all these memories of times when I was having challenges breastfeeding in those early days, and I had one particular GP who was a godsend. Like, my baby was really unsettled, crying, 6 weeks postpartum, and I took the baby and myself to the GP, and she was the first person to take all the clothes off my baby, look at her from head to toe, and she identified something that needed to be sorted, which was why she was upset. And then she just sat with me while I breastfed.
No.
And I just, it sounds so ridiculous, but it was such a calming influence. And it could have been, GP, lactation consultant, family, whoever, but just having someone there to calm a stressed mum out.
Heard, and exactly. And that's what I always say as well. I always say, if your baby is really unsettled, seek help and ask, and make sure you are speaking to someone who's actually listening to you, because your mum instinct is so important, and as health professionals we really need to listen to that.
Yep, great advice. To wrap up, is there anything else I should have asked that I haven't when it comes to preparing for breastfeeding? And I know we were going to talk about postpartum in general, but this is so much, I think this topic's perfect, like preparing to breastfeed, and the breastfeeding journey. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about?
I think my other advice would be to really prepare meals for breastfeeding as well, because you actually get so hungry when you breastfeed, and we know that your body needs so many more calories when you are breastfeeding as well. And a lot of women are stuck on the couch with the baby breastfeeding and can't access, if their partner or support person is not there with them, that they really struggle to be eating and nourishing themselves. But we know that nourishing you is so important to nourish your baby. So I would just say, when you are pregnant, really try and stock your freezer full of really nourishing meals. Or if you're not a person who likes cooking, investing in a postpartum meal service, having some really healthy snacks, again, that you can have in the freezer, or some healthy snacks that you can have as in a packet that you can keep in a caddy beside you. I think that's the other thing, is just when you are preparing to breastfeed, having a little caddy beside you, like a little basket or a caddy or something with, pain relief tissues, because you're going to cry. We all cry postpartum in those early days. Having, your phone charger, big water bottle, some snacks there, like all the things that you need. I think that's another really important part to prepare for breastfeeding, because when you are breastfeeding, to be able to have snacks and all the things you need within arm's reach is so valuable, and something that a lot of people don't realize.
And that I'll take that one step further and discuss with your partner or a support person that you've got with you, discuss how they can help you with breastfeeding, because obviously they can't breastfeed for you. But I remember one of the most helpful things my husband did in those early days was before he went to work, he would make my breakfast and it would be there on the bench for whenever I was ready for it, whether or not that was 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 12, and it was, it became a bit of a habit where he just prepared for breakfast. So, and because the time is zapped, isn't it, in those early days? And before you know it, it's lunchtime. You think, oh my gosh.
Exactly. And you're starving and everything is so much harder when you're hungry. Like everything is just so hard when you're hungry. And I absolutely agree with that, really having, and a lot of support people want to know how to help as well. And a big thing that and I think as well, sometimes you do actually have to teach your support person how to support you. And I think having those open and honest conversations in pregnancy to go, I may not know exactly how you're going to need to support me now, but if you could just be really open postpartum to having these conversations when I do know what I need. And a big thing that I know I asked my husband to do is I was like, anytime you come in the room, can you just say, can I get you anything? And that was just such a game changer for us, because sometimes you're like, I don't want to ask. I've asked a million times. I can't. And you're not thinking. And then he would just say, can I get you anything? And then I thought, actually, know how to help as well. And a big thing that and I think as well, sometimes you do actually have to teach your support person how to support you. And I think having those open and honest conversations in pregnancy to go, I may not know exactly how you're going to need to support me now, but if you could just be really open postpartum to having these conversations when I do know what I need. And a big thing that I know I asked my husband to do is I was like, anytime you come in the room, can you just say, can I get you anything? And that was just such a game changer for us, because sometimes you're like, I don't want to ask. I've asked a million times. I can't. And you're not thinking. And then he would just say, can I get you anything? And then I thought, actually, yes. And then, no, I'm actually okay right now, but thank you. I think so. Yeah, I love what you said there. Like, it's so important to just be on the same page about how you can, how your partner can or support person can support you while breastfeeding is really, really important. And one-handed snacks, always bring one-handed snacks and fill up drink bottles and that sort of thing.
And I love that question your partner asked you. Hopefully that question still happens years down the track.
Yeah, absolutely. It actually still does. Sometimes I'm still in a contact nap.
Perfect. Amazing, Amber. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was an absolute pleasure to chat all things preparing to breastfeed. So, Amber, where can people come and find you if they'd like to connect?
Thank you. Instagram is usually the best place to find me. So I'm on Instagram at Body, Birth and Baby, or you can go to my website, www.bodybirthandbaby.com.au, but you can click email or click through my website or through my Instagram. So yeah, that's mostly where I am.
Amazing. Amber, thank you so much for joining me today. Absolute pleasure to chat all things antenatal, expressing and preparing to breastfeed.
Thanks so much for having me.
Catch you soon.
And that's it. Before I sign off, remember my team and I will be putting together the show notes for this episode with all the links, including how to connect with Amber at fitnessmama.com/podcast. Have a fabulous day, everyone. And I look forward to you joining me next week for another episode of the Pregnancy, Birth and Recovery podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Fitness Mama podcast, brought to you by the Fitness Mama freebies found at www.fitnessmama.com/free. So please take a few seconds to leave a review, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and be sure to take a screenshot of this podcast, upload it to your social media, and tag me at Fitness Mama so I can give you a shout out too. Until next time, remember, an active pregnancy, confident childbirth, and strong postnatal recovery is something that you deserve. Remember our disclaimer, materials and contents in this podcast are intended as general information only and shouldn't substitute any medical advice, diagnosis or treatment. I'll see you soon.